Hi, it's Tim Gordon, Communications Steroids. Talk about social media, which is one of the places where you can amp up and put your communications on steroids with your customers and prospective clients, all those people that you want to do business with. One thing that's been said about the old media, the sort of the mainstream media, radio and TV, newspapers, magazines, that it's all one way. Well, I worked in radio for 25 years. I never thought it was one way, but I'll tell you why. Back then, and I'm sure it's still this way in radio now, I haven't been behind a radio microphone for a while, although I do a lot of podcasting, we had a thing called a request line. And we would get a lot of calls from our listeners, you know, basically to request songs, but they would give us feedback on everything. If we had something on the air they didn't like, they would let us know. If we had something they liked, they would let us know. I remember one instance when I was very young in radio, I probably was 19 or 20 at the time, some lady called up and just complained about some song, we shouldn't be playing that blah, 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 and I, went to great pains to point out to her very kindly that she had an option. In fact, she had three options. Well, she maybe had two options. One was to turn the volume down or turn the radio off, because she had the freedom of choice. She had the ability to turn the station off or use the station selector and go to a different radio station. Well, she didn't like that because she liked our radio station. She just didn't like what we were doing on that radio station. She was invested in it. She was buying into what we were doing, except for that one or two things, so she let us know. Social media is different. Customers are always talking back. There are millions of people out there talking about your particular product, or whether it's your product, it's your industry. They're blogging, they're tweeting, they're putting videos up on YouTube. And so a company's brand really is everything that goes into that. It's all of that's being said about it, all that you put out about it, your advertising, your press releases, what your company does, along with what everyone says about it. That's what your brand is. Newspapers, for instance, have a great feedback forum, most of them do anyway, which is called a letters to the editor page. And that's a great place to get feedback from what your local community is doing. Social media, we all have a chance to talk back. What's interesting about social media, though, is that the message, if it's negative in particular, goes faster and farther. I mean, it's an instant. I'll give you a good example. Chase Bank. I ran across a tweet. Link sent me to a blog post about Chase Bank and how this guy complained about it. See, when Washington Mutual went under, Chase took it over. And the guy hated the customer service. And he complained about it on his blog. He had very specific things he didn't like about it. In fact, Chase basically said, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. Well, in the old days, he couldn't do much about that. But on this blog, that thing kept getting passed around on Twitter and everywhere else. And by the time I got to his blog post, a few months later, there was 350 blog post comments about that particular thing. Almost all of them, like 99%, sharing similar bad experiences. Now, that does not bode well for Chase and their brand. I don't know if they care, I don't know if they notice, but when you have hundreds of thousands of people commenting about it, it's going to make a picture. So in a bigger picture, though, let's look at this. There are billions of people that do not have access to the platform that you and I kind of take for granted, which is a blog or being able to post on Twitter. I still have friends that don't even own a computer. I know it's crazy, but that's the way it is. And around the world, there are billions of people that don't have that. So I still think it's up to a company to find out what those people that do not have access and are not taking advantage of that access, what they really think about their products. So just because you're listening to social media doesn't mean you can't ignore the other types of listening that you used to do, or the conversation you tried to have with your customers in the old days. I think that's very valid. I think what's happening with social media is a lot of people are saying, oh, social media is where it's all out. We got to plug into that and forget everything else. That's not the case. A company is still responsible to find those other opinions and include them in their product and service development. I'm Tim Gordon, and that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Communication Steroids.